God's chosen ones. Listen closely. This is not just a video, it's a prophetic moment. The timing of this message is not random. The fact that you're here right now, hearing these words, means heaven has summoned you. Out of the billions on this earth, you were called here, and not because of luck, an algorithm, or curiosity. Something far greater is unfolding. This is divine orchestration. God is preparing to send an unexpected meeting into your life. And this meeting, it will not only shift your direction, it will confirm what your spirit has long whispered in the dark. This is not just about an opportunity or a person. This is about destiny colliding with divine timing. You've waited, wept, wondered, and wrestled, but now the wait is over. This is the moment the heavens have been arranging behind the scenes. Even when you felt forgotten, you've endured so much in silence, ridiculed for your obedience, rejected for your light. But through every dark hallway, every closed door, every unanswered prayer, you remained. You didn't curse God. You didn't compromise. You chose the narrow road even when it was lonely. And now that quiet obedience is being rewarded. The meeting that's coming will not look like what the world expects. It may not arrive with trumpets or titles. It may be subtle, a conversation, a dream, a person sent by God. But when it comes, your spirit will know, this is it. This is the shift, the release, the appointment you were born to walk into. You're not being called to escape. You're being called to ascend. This is not about death. It's about elevation, about becoming what you were always meant to be. And you are no longer in the waiting room. Heaven is calling you into the throne room. If this resonates with you even slightly, drop 777 in the comments right now. That number is not just symbolic, it's a seal. It means spiritual completion, divine alignment, and God's favor being perfected in your life. And before we continue, we want to thank each one of you who has sown into this message through super thanks. Whether you've donated or simply shown up with an open heart, thank you. Your support is part of why messages like this continue to reach those who need it most. Every seed you plant in faith carries a supernatural return. Now, take a breath, because what's coming next will stir something deep in your soul. We're about to step into the deeper revelation of what this unexpected meeting means, how it connects to your calling, and why the warfare was so intense leading up to this moment. You've been asking, God, when will it be my time? And heaven is now answering, right now, the wait is over. Let's walk into the mystery together. Let's begin. God's chosen ones, the wait is over. God is sending an unexpected meeting. In a world brimming with noise, distractions, and endless comparisons, it's not surprising that you sometimes feel lost, like a single leaf drifting in a vast and unpredictable storm. Many people around you chase status, possessions, or fleeting pleasures, trying to find meaning in surface-level pursuits. But something inside you feels different. There's a whisper beneath the chaos, a divine pulse echoing from the depth of your spirit, calling you forward, inviting you into something greater. This isn't an illusion. It isn't a coincidence. This is the divine orchestration of your life finally revealing itself. God has handpicked you for a reason, not as an afterthought, but by deliberate design. Just as Jeremiah was called before he was formed in the womb, Jeremiah 1:5, so too was your purpose woven into the tapestry of creation long before you even opened your eyes. Can you feel it now? That inner stirring that refuses to be ignored. This calling isn't casual, it's commanding. It's not simply a mission, it's a spiritual awakening that stirs your very core. You've likely wondered why life has taken the turns it has, why the closed doors, Why the betrayals? Why the delay? But the truth is, your life has never been random. Each chapter, no matter how confusing, has been a page in the divine manuscript of your destiny. The chosen ones, like you, do not stumble upon purpose. They are drawn into it by divine timing. Imagine a butterfly in a cocoon, immobile, hidden, even forgotten. But within that quiet space, a transformation is taking place. That's where you've been, unseen, but not unloved, quiet, but not uncalled. The wait has been sacred preparation. Now let me tell you about Daniel, a quiet university professor who spent years feeling overlooked, undervalued, and misplaced. He kept praying, kept serving, kept believing. Then, one unexpected afternoon, during a conference he didn't even plan to attend, a philanthropist noticed the depth of his ideas. That one divine meeting changed everything. He was invited to lead a global project that aligned perfectly with his calling. What if your divine moment is just as near? Even Jesus, in his earthly ministry, experienced seasons of solitude before stepping into divine appointment. He spent 30 years in obscurity before the heavens opened and the Father declared, "This is my beloved Son." Matthew 3:17. If the Son of God waited in silence, who are you to doubt the value of your preparation? You don't need to be perfect. You don't need the approval of the masses. What God seeks from you is unwavering trust. Trust like Abraham had when he left everything behind, not knowing where he was going, simply because God said, "Go." Hebrews 11:8. Is that the faith burning quietly inside you now? Even Pope John Paul II, one of the most influential spiritual leaders of modern history, once said, "Do not be afraid. Open wide the doors to Christ." He understood that answering the divine call required courage, not certainty. Are you ready to walk through the door that God has just now opened? This road may test you. In fact, if you're truly chosen, it likely already has. Chosen ones are often forged in the fire of affliction, like Joseph in prison, David fleeing Saul, or Ruth gleaning in foreign fields. But each of them was being positioned, not punished for what was coming next. What if your pain has been preparation for the promise? There may have been days you felt invisible, even forgotten, nights where your prayers seemed to echo into silence. But God has not ignored a single word. He is not late. He is exact. The appointed time has come. Your divine meeting is already set in motion, and everything is about to shift. You're not standing at the end of your story. You're standing at the threshold of an entirely new beginning, one not defined by struggle, but by ascension, one not limited by what the world offers, but lifted by what heaven has prepared. The wait is truly over. Step forward. The divine encounter that changes everything is closer than you think. Imagine walking through a life that constantly stretches your soul like a rope pulled tight, where each step seems to be a test, each silence another trial of your faith. You've felt the sting of being misunderstood, and you've been mocked for your convictions more than once. It may feel as though you've been left on the bench while others race ahead, but in truth, you've been held back for a reason. Because now, the moment has arrived. The divine clock has struck its appointed hour. The waiting was never wasted. The call is no longer distant. It's drawing near with clarity and force. No longer will you linger in uncertainty, questioning whether what you sensed was real. God is not asking you to wait aimlessly in the shadows. For those who have endured in silence, who've held on in obscurity, this moment marks the turning point, the sacred inflection point that separates the called from the chosen. Have you noticed that the greatest transformations often begin in the quietest moments? Like Moses, who wasn't chosen in a palace but while tending sheep in the wilderness, Exodus 3:1-4. He didn't expect a meeting with God, but the burning bush changed everything. In a single divine moment, the ordinary became extraordinary. Could the same be true for you right now? God is summoning you, beyond your challenges, beyond the weight of rejection, beyond the attachments you've poured your life into. It's never easy to release what you've known, especially when you've worked hard to build it. But those who are chosen know deep within. Letting go of the familiar is the only way to step fully into the extraordinary. Let me tell you about Layla, a visual artist from Barcelona. For years, her work was ignored. Critics scoffed, galleries closed their doors, but she kept creating, painting the visions she believed God placed in her heart. Then, one day, an unexpected email came from an international curator. Her work now hangs in cathedrals across Europe, speaking truth to thousands. What if your hidden preparation is about to be revealed in the same way? The divine call's not about earning a title or receiving applause. It's about being ready, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Many will hear God's voice in passing, but few will answer it with the resolve to endure what the assignment demands. Are you among the few who won't shrink back? Because being chosen is not for the faint of heart. It's not about ego. It's not about being admired. It's about readiness. It's about refinement. Just as gold must be purified by fire, your soul is being shaped by pressure. Think of a diamond. Its brilliance only emerges after immense heat and crushing force. That's the beauty of your journey. What has tried to break you is actually perfecting you. And this is not just theory, it's truth borne out through time. Look at Job. When everything was stripped from him, wealth, health, family, he remained faithful. His story isn't about suffering alone, it's about restoration and revelation. Though he slay me, yet will I trust him. Job 13:15. That kind of trust is what God is drawing out of you now. Or think of Nelson Mandela, the South African freedom fighter who spent 27 years in prison. When asked how he endured, he said, "I am not a saint unless you think of a saint as a sinner who keeps on trying." His perseverance shaped a nation. And your endurance, it will shape something far bigger than you imagine. Being chosen means walking a path most avoid. It means saying yes to a life that doesn't always make sense, but always produces fruit in the end. You might not feel special in the eyes of the world, but heaven knows your name. Your consistency in adversity is the proof of your selection. The rejection was never a curse. It was confirmation that your assignment was too great to fit into small places. Each day is not just another date on the calendar. It's a sacred invitation to prove your faith, deepen your character, and take another step toward fulfilling the holy blueprint God wrote for you long ago. The resistance? It's part of the test. The silence? It's part of the training. The mockery? A badge worn by every chosen one, from the prophets to the apostles. And yes, there will be questions. When the nights are long, will you still believe? When the crowd walks away, will you keep standing? When your prayers feel unanswered, will you trust the one who hears them anyway? Because the fulfillment of your destiny was never about worldly success. It was never about applause or approval. It's about this moment, where your heart remains open and your spirit leans into the unseen. That's where the chosen ones rise. And you, beloved, are among them. You've been tested not to break you, but to build you. You've been refined, not forgotten. And because of your persistence, the gates of purpose are opening before you. This is not the end. This is your rise. The meeting with God is not a distant dream. It's already begun. One of the deepest burdens of being chosen is not just the external opposition you face, but the pain that comes when that opposition comes from those you love the most. There's a particular kind of ache that pierces the soul when your faith is mocked by those you thought would understand. When your closest circle questions your direction, your convictions, or even your sanity, it cuts deeper than any insult from the outside world. Yet, strangely and powerfully, This very pain becomes part of the refining fire that molds you into the person God has destined you to be. Chosen ones often walk through life misunderstood, but you were not chosen to be understood. You were chosen to be faithful. Remember Joseph. His own brothers, flesh and blood, sold him into slavery out of jealousy. They couldn't see the divine dream planted in him. But even in betrayal, God was preparing him for rulership. Genesis 50:20. Could it be that the very rejection you're facing is preparing you for something greater than you've ever imagined? There are moments when the people around you, those who share your roof, your history, your blood, may laugh at your spiritual sensitivity. They may belittle your boundaries, dismiss your spiritual disciplines, or roll their eyes at the dreams you carry. And you begin to wonder, am I wrong for believing what I believe? But you are not here to chase the approval of man. You're here to glorify God. This path isn't popular, it's purposeful. Think about Hannah, the mother of the prophet Samuel. She was mocked for years by those around her, even ridiculed by Eli the priest when she prayed in anguish. Yet her pain birthed one of Israel's greatest prophets. 1 Samuel 1:10-20. Could the scorn you've endured be the very soil where your purpose is growing? And let me tell you about Elias, a high school music teacher in a small town who began to spend his evenings composing worship songs, despite being told it was a waste of time. His students laughed and even his family didn't understand. But one of those songs ended up in the hands of a gospel producer, and today his music leads tens of thousands in worship across nations. What if your quiet obedience is setting up something global? Even Jesus faced ridicule in his own hometown. "Isn't this the carpenter's son?" they asked in disbelief. Matthew 13:55-57. The very people who watched him grow up could not see the anointing he carried. He was not accepted, even among those who knew his name. And if the Son of God himself was dishonored by family and neighbors, why would your path be exempt from such pain? There's a quiet courage required when you continue to walk in your calling while others whisper behind your back. Like a lighthouse standing firm in the storm, your stability doesn't depend on who surrounds you, but on the one who anchors you. Every insult becomes a chisel. Every misunderstanding shapes you. The same way a tree grows deeper roots when faced with wind and storm, so too is your spirit digging deeper into divine strength. And still, it hurts. When the ones who should be your greatest cheerleaders become your most persistent critics, it leaves invisible bruises. But know this, their rejection is not a reflection of your worth. It's a revelation of their inability to discern your calling. Don't let their blindness cause you to question your vision. You were never meant to be carried by the crowd. You were meant to walk in the direction God whispered to your heart, even if you walk alone, especially when you walk alone, for the road of the chosen one is often paved with solitude before it leads to elevation. Pope Francis once said, "Holiness does not mean doing extraordinary things, but doing ordinary things with love and faith." It's not always the visible victories that mark your calling, but the quiet loyalty when no one's watching, when no one understands. That's the test few ever see, but heaven does. The world will often celebrate you too late. The family who once laughed may someday marvel, but even if that never happens, your validation comes from above. God sees the tears behind your worship, the silence behind your strength, the restraint behind your kindness, and He honors it all. There may be days when it feels like you're waiting endlessly for reconciliation, for recognition, for release. But waiting is never wasted when it's in the hands of God. Like a seed buried beneath the surface, your growth is hidden before it becomes visible. Can you trust His process when nothing around you seems to change? Even when loved ones can't walk with you, trust that God still leads you. His plans for you reach far beyond the bounds of human acceptance. They stretch into eternity. What matters now is that you keep your faith intact, even when your heart feels fractured. This is not the end of your story. It's the forging of a warrior, and your silent endurance is echoing in heaven louder than you think. You're not forgotten, you're not foolish, you're chosen, and soon the very people who misunderstood your journey will witness your rising and know it was God all along. There are seasons when the weight of waiting presses on your soul like a silence that refuses to break. You watch as the world spins forward, people building, moving, achieving, while your own life feels suspended in stillness. In those moments, it's tempting to believe you've been forgotten. But what feels like delay is often divine preparation. God's timing never falters. It isn't aligned with your calendar, your clock, or your expectations. It's calibrated to something infinitely wiser, His perfect will. Those who are chosen must learn this sacred lesson. Waiting is not wasting, it is molding. You are not being held back, you are being fortified. Just as oak trees grow slow and strong, sending their roots deep into unseen soil, so too is your spirit stretching downward before it rises upward. When the moment arrives, you will not be shaken. You will stand because your foundation was carved in the quiet. Think of David, anointed king as a youth, yet he returned to shepherding sheep. Years passed, filled with hiding, hunger, and betrayal, before he ever sat on the throne. 1 Samuel 16 to 2 Samuel 5. Why such a delay? Because kings aren't just crowned, they are formed, and so are you. Can you feel the forming even in your waiting? Sometimes the transition God is preparing for you feels like an ending, but it is truly the beginning of a higher chapter. This isn't about death, it's about transformation. The caterpillar may think its world is over when it's wrapped in darkness, but that darkness is a cocoon. The struggle inside is what gives the butterfly wings. Transition for God's chosen ones is not a departure from life, but a journey into its purest form. You are not abandoning the familiar. You are awakening to the fullness of your divine identity. The things you once clung to, fear, doubt, insecurity, begin to lose their grip. You begin to see from a higher vantage point where peace, clarity, and purpose reside. Let me share with you the story of Jamal, a hospital chaplain in his late 60s. For decades, he served patients in silence, never seeking attention. One night, while sitting with a dying woman who had no family, he sang softly to her. A nurse recorded the moment. The video went viral, and for the first time, Jamal's quiet life of service was honored publicly. But what touched him most wasn't the recognition. It was knowing that even in hiddenness, God had never stopped watching. What if your waiting, like Jamal's, is the preparation for an unveiling only heaven can orchestrate? In this divine shift, you're not being asked to erase who you were. You're being invited to elevate into who you've always been. It's not about walking away from love, memories, or relationships. It's about stepping beyond the weight of the material world and into a realm where divine love reigns without limits, where suffering no longer defines you. The Apostle Paul described this beautifully. We do not lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. 2 Corinthians 4:16. That renewal is what you're walking into, a higher consciousness, a dimension where the spirit is unbound and love flows without resistance. And yet, to those still rooted in the material, this ascent may look like loss. The world might label your transition as strange or sorrowful, but they don't understand the weight of glory that awaits. The truth is, chosen ones do not leave because they are tired. They leave because they are summoned. They do not disappear, they ascend. They don't abandon, they return home to the one who formed them. You are not escaping, you are graduating. You are not running away from pain, you are rising into divine peace. The world may mourn, but heaven celebrates. And as you take this step, you leave behind not people or places, but limitations. You step into the ultimate reunion, face to face with God, who says, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Matthew 25:21. There's no agony in that moment, only awe. Imagine standing before the Creator of the galaxies, and as His gaze meets yours, every scar on your soul melts into light. Every unanswered prayer is suddenly understood. Every wound becomes a well of glory. That is the reward, not just for believing in God, but for trusting Him when nothing made sense. Famous author and Holocaust survivor Corrie ten Boom once said, "Never be afraid to trust an unknown future to a known God." Her words still echo truth. You may not know every detail of where God is leading you, but you do know the one who is leading. And if He is calling you higher, it's because you're ready. When He calls, it's not just an invitation, it's an affirmation. You have endured the fires, you have trusted in silence, you have stayed faithful in the furnace. Now, your transition is His response to that unwavering trust. His love will meet you in ways you could never explain in human language, because His love is not earned, it's given. It validates your every step, every sacrifice, every moment of silent obedience. You are not leaving behind your life. You are entering the fullness of it. And when that moment comes, when His voice breaks through the veil of time and space, everything inside you will know, this is it. This is what I was made for. And every tear, every night of doubt, every unanswered question will be swallowed up by a single eternal truth. You were chosen, you were faithful, and now, beloved, you are home. For those who have been chosen, there is no greater dream, no higher desire than this, an intimate, sacred meeting with God that marks the fulfillment of everything they've endured. You have now arrived at the pinnacle of your journey, the summit of your calling, where all the years of struggle begin to make sense. This isn't merely a destination, it's a divine encounter where every burden falls away, and only the eternal presence of God remains. The pain, the pressure, the past, they all dissolve into the overwhelming beauty of His love. This gathering isn't about spectacle or applause. It transcends every earthly joy and pleasure. It is more than a reward, it is a reunion. It's the moment when the one who formed you looks into your soul and whispers, "Well done, my good and faithful servant." Matthew 25:21. Can you imagine that? The Creator of the universe acknowledging your perseverance, your faith, your unseen sacrifices. In His presence, all fear disappears. Uncertainty loses its grip. You are no longer defined by what you carried, emotional wounds, physical limitations, financial burdens. You are now enveloped by a love that knows no boundaries and a peace that cannot be described in human terms. It is not the end, it is the highest beginning. But to step into this celestial moment, a preparation of the soul is required. Transformation doesn't just happen externally, it unfolds deep within. And you, God's chosen one, are being invited into this sacred process. It is not about abandoning everything you've known. It's about releasing what no longer serves who you're becoming. As the moment of transition draws near, many of you have felt it, that holy stirring in your spirit, the quiet pull that something is shifting. That sensation is not random. It is heaven's invitation. You're being called into the life you were always meant to live, a life where your identity is no longer shaped by struggle, but by divine purpose. Like a mountain that breaks through clouds after a long storm, you are emerging from the trials with clarity and light. Think of Elijah, weary and alone in a cave, thinking his mission was over, only to encounter God, not in fire or wind, but in a gentle whisper. 1 Kings 19:11 through 12. That whisper, quiet but unstoppable, was his call to rise again. Could that same whisper now be calling you? Or consider Sister Amy, a woman of faith in the early 1900s who was mocked for her preaching, yet went on to build one of the most influential spiritual movements of her time. Despite ridicule, she kept answering the call. Her secret? A heart fully surrendered to God. What if your surrender now is the seed of a legacy that heaven will water? As you prepare to ascend into your divine transformation, you must loosen your grip on fear, on bitterness, on worldly attachment. Open your heart wide. Let faith and love become the oxygen of your soul. Your transition is not something to fear. It is your sacred becoming. And you do not walk this path alone. Even now, God's presence surrounds you like the unwavering love of a mother. Think of how a mother watches her child sleep, guarding their dreams, healing their wounds with her silent care. That is how God watches over you. His love is not passive. It is protective, nourishing, and fierce. As the psalmist writes, "As a mother comforts her child, so will I comfort you." Isaiah 66:13. This maternal love doesn't scold you when you falter. It holds you. It sees the depth of your struggle and whispers peace into your panic. When you stumble, it steadies you. When you cry, it gathers your tears. Even when the world turns away or misunderstands your calling, God's love leans closer, wrapping you in assurance that you are never alone. Let me tell you about Marcos, a quiet caretaker in a nursing home. No one ever saw his nightly prayers for the residents or the way he'd sing softly to soothe them. He lived in hidden service. One night, a dying patient who'd been unresponsive for weeks suddenly opened her eyes and said, "Thank you for loving me like God does." Marcos knew in that moment his life had mattered deeply. Your path too carries meaning that only heaven fully sees. This love of God is your refuge in chaos, your strength in the storm, and your anchor in the flood. It will carry you through every trial, and in the end, it will lift you to places you never thought possible. The world may see your departure from earthly concerns as a loss, but heaven knows it as your rise. This is not an escape. This is not abandonment. This is ascension. You are not leaving life behind. You are walking into the fullest expression of it. The transition is holy, and your preparation is sacred. It is not about having a perfect record, but about having a sincere heart, a heart that loves without agenda, a heart that believes even when it bleeds. The chosen are those who have endured the furnace and emerged with love instead of bitterness. You have faced rejection without surrendering your dignity. You have endured silence without losing your praise. That is purity. That is strength. And now the door opens. Step through it, not with fear, but with awe. You are not just meeting God. You are returning to Him. And in His presence every wound will be healed, every question answered, every broken piece made whole. This is the moment, the sacred moment you were born for. There is a moment in the journey of every chosen one when the final test approaches. Not a test of strength, but of surrender. This test isn't loud or dramatic. It comes quietly, asking you to release all that you've ever known. All the comforts, all the identities, all the things, seen and unseen, that tethered you to the weight of the world. It is here, in this sacred pause, that you are called to the highest act of obedience, letting go. This surrender is not about abandoning loved ones or rejecting the beauty of the earth. It's about releasing your grasp on the temporary, the fleeting, and the distracting. It's about loosening your hold on the material world so that your soul can soar freely into its true dwelling place, a realm where nothing dies and nothing fades. You are not being asked to forsake love. You are being invited to walk into a love that is eternal. Consider Abraham. He was willing to lay down his beloved son Isaac, not because he didn't love him, but because he trusted God more than his own understanding. Genesis 22, 1 through 12. That moment was not about loss. It was about faith. In the same way, you are being asked not to cling to the visible, but to trust that the invisible is far more real. To let go is to accept that earth was never your true home. Your real citizenship has always been in heaven. Philippians 3:20. Can you feel that gentle ache in your spirit, that longing for something more? That is eternity calling you back to where you belong. Let me tell you about Clara, a midwife who served in silence for 40 years in rural villages. She never saw her name in lights, never stood behind pulpits. But in her final year, as she lay in a hospice bed, she whispered to her nurse, "I finally see it now. God was with me in every cry, every birth, every mother I held." That clarity wasn't forced. It came when her soul was ready to see. Could it be that your moment of divine clarity is also just ahead? This is the transformation that no earthly wealth or success can imitate. It's not flashy, it's holy. It's not about what you leave behind, but what you are stepping into. When the chosen ones let go, they are not dying. They are being born into a higher realm where sorrow, pain, and time no longer limit them. This is the awakening, the divine unveiling that every chosen soul experiences. It doesn't come through striving. It arrives when the soul is ripe and ready. And suddenly, everything that once seemed random begins to form a pattern. You realize that even in your most confusing detours, God's fingerprints were guiding you. The curtain lifts, the fog clears, and your divine mission stands before you with radiant clarity. Have you ever wondered why your greatest clarity often comes after your greatest chaos? Like Paul, who was struck blind on the road to Damascus, only to rise as a vessel for the gospel, Acts 9:1-19. Your awakening often follows a season of darkness, but once you see, you cannot unsee. Once you know, you cannot unknow. This realization is both humbling and empowering. You begin to understand that your life was never just about your own comfort or achievements. You were set apart for something far greater, for a purpose that reaches beyond your name, beyond your family, beyond your generation. And with that revelation comes responsibility. At first, the weight of this realization may feel heavy, but over time, you'll feel the weight transform into wings. You're no longer just existing, you're walking in divine alignment. You'll find that every sacrifice begins to make sense. Every moment of loneliness, every tear, every time you were misunderstood, it was never wasted, it was preparation. And the journey doesn't end with one awakening, it is a lifelong unfolding. Each season brings deeper understanding. Each challenge peels back another layer of your calling. And slowly, you begin to recognize something profound. Every delay was divine. Every test was tailored. Every valley was leading you here, to this place of sacred awareness. You may look back and wonder how you ever doubted, but that's the beauty of God's mercy. He never leaves you, even when you can't see the way. And when you finally realize that the road you walked was always pointing upward, your heart will swell with gratitude. Your soul knows it now. You were never walking in circles. You were climbing a sacred mountain. And now, as you stand at the edge of divine fulfillment, one truth echoes from heaven to earth. You were chosen. You were prepared. And now, you are ready. One of the most profound and life-altering experiences you, as one of God's chosen ones, will ever encounter is learning the sacred art of surrender. But make no mistake, surrender is not weakness. It is not about quitting. It is not about passivity or helplessness. True surrender is an act of divine courage. It is the moment you willingly lay down your own plans, your need for control, and your fear of the unknown, and place everything into the hands of the one who formed the stars and also formed you. For most people, this isn't easy. The world has trained you to believe that survival depends on control. From childhood, you're taught to push harder, fight longer, and force outcomes. The belief is subtle but deep. If you don't take charge, everything will fall apart. But what if real strength is the opposite of that narrative? What if letting go is the most powerful thing you could ever do? Think of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. As he faced the cross, he prayed, "Not my will, but yours be done." Luke 22:42. That wasn't defeat. That was divine submission. That was the moment surrender became the gateway to resurrection. Are you willing to trust God even when the path ahead looks like a cross instead of a crown? To surrender is not to abandon effort. It is to abandon the illusion that you must be the one to force every outcome. It means removing the weight you've been carrying, the pressure to figure everything out, and giving that burden back to God. It is in that release that you truly become free. You begin to see life differently. You feel the weight lift. And most importantly, you allow God to take you places your effort could never reach. Let me tell you about Andre, a former tech entrepreneur in New York who hit rock bottom after losing everything in a market crash. In desperation, he stopped trying to fix his life and prayed a prayer he'd never prayed before. God, I don't know what I'm doing. You take it. Within 2 years, he was leading a non-profit that's now transforming lives globally. He says, "The day I let go was the day everything started to flow." Could your greatest breakthrough be waiting just on the other side of surrender? The first moments of surrender may feel like you're free falling. You no longer have your hands on the wheel. You stop striving, and that unfamiliar stillness can feel terrifying. But this is where divine power begins to rise. This is where miracles are born, not through control, but through complete trust. Surrender is not for the faint-hearted. It requires you to admit something difficult. I am not God. And yet it opens the door to something beautiful. But I know the one who is. When you relinquish control, you step into the divine current of God's purpose. You no longer struggle against the tide. You let the river of His will carry you. And like a leaf resting on the surface of a river, you are no longer steering. You are being carried by grace itself. This doesn't mean life becomes easy or predictable. It means you have peace that defies circumstances. It means you no longer panic when doors close, because you trust the one who knows which door leads to your destiny. As Proverbs 3:5-6 declares, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." Surrender is the embodiment of that scripture. It's the act of saying, I don't see it, I don't understand it, but I trust you. And as you walk in that trust, things begin to shift. You notice divine timing unfold. You begin to hear God more clearly. You stop fighting battles He never asked you to fight. You begin to move in sync with heaven instead of wrestling with the world. This is where true power lies, not in clinging tightly, but in letting go gracefully. Surrender comes from a heart filled not with fear, but with love. Love that trusts God's character even when you can't trace His hand. Love that knows He is not distant or indifferent, but intimately invested in every step of your journey. Love that whispers, even this, God will use for good. And as your grip loosens, you'll find something unexpected. Peace. Not the fragile peace the world offers, but the deep anchored peace that comes from knowing God is guiding every step. You'll breathe again. Hope will rise again. And in that sacred stillness, your soul will finally rest in knowing it was never all up to you. You were never created to carry it all. You were chosen to surrender it all. And in doing so, you will discover a freedom more powerful than anything your control could have ever produced. The journey you've been walking, the one marked by questions, disruptions, and unexpected turns, is not a detour. It is the divine path of self-discovery that every chosen one must travel. This is not a surface-level journey. It is a sacred excavation, one that requires peeling away the layers of who you thought you were in order to uncover the truth of who God says you are. It is not about becoming someone new, It's about returning to the person you were always meant to be. This path is often filled with tension. It demands that you confront your fears, not just the loud ones, but the quiet, buried anxieties that have whispered to you for years, doubts you didn't even realize were shaping your decisions, wounds you covered with strength. The journey of the chosen is not comfortable, but it is holy. It is the stripping away of false identity and the revealing of divine purpose. Do you remember Moses, raised in Pharaoh's palace, trained as royalty, yet tormented by a dual identity? It wasn't until he fled into the wilderness, stripped of titles, status, and power, that he discovered who he truly was, a deliverer appointed by God. Exodus 3. Could it be that your own wilderness is the place where your true name is about to be revealed? You are not defined by your past, by your failures, or even by the circumstances that tried to limit you. You are defined by the purpose God wove into your spirit before you took your first breath. That purpose has survived every lie spoken over you, every mistake you've made, and every time you felt unseen. It has never left you. The journey is not about finding something new. It's about remembering something eternal. At the beginning of this path, many chosen ones sense a deep and unexplainable yearning, a spiritual homesickness. You may have felt it as a restlessness, a holy dissatisfaction, a longing for something more, something that the world could never seem to satisfy. That is not confusion. That is your soul awakening. You are being drawn back to your divine origin. Let me share the story of Amara, a gifted architect who, despite professional success, constantly battled emptiness. On a silent retreat, away from the noise of achievement and accolades, she rediscovered her childhood passion for healing through design. She began rebuilding schools in underserved regions, designing not just with skill, but with heart. Her career became a mission. Her title became her testimony. What if the truth about your identity has been waiting in the silence beneath everything you've been performing? The world is quick to label you, to define you by your occupation, your background, your failures, or your achievements. But God's definition runs deeper. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Jeremiah 1:5. Your identity was authored before your first breath and cannot be altered by anyone else's perception. Still, this unfolding requires courage. To embrace who you are becoming, you must let go of who you were pretending to be. The masks, the expectations, the inherited roles. You must be willing to lay them down. This may mean disappointing others, challenging generational patterns, or walking away from paths that seemed secure but were never truly yours. Have you ever noticed how a snake must shed its skin in order to grow? That's what this season is for you. The shedding may feel painful, vulnerable, exposing, but without it you cannot expand. You cannot breathe in the fullness of who you are. Jesus said, "Whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it." Matthew 16:25. In the spiritual sense, to lose your life means letting go of your constructed identity so you can find your true one in Him. That's what the chosen must do, not just once, but continually. Each new level of your calling requires a deeper revelation of who you are in Christ. It's possible you've lived under the weight of voices, family expectations, societal molds, even your own harsh self-talk, but those constraints were never meant to define you. You were not created to fit in a box. You were created to overflow with divine purpose, to radiate your unique calling, and to walk in the truth of your heavenly design. As you move deeper into self-discovery, you'll begin to see more clearly than ever, not just who you are, but who God is in you. You'll begin to trust the voice within more than the noise outside. You'll stop chasing validation and begin walking in revelation. This transformation is not the end, it's the foundation. It's the unveiling of your divine identity, an identity rooted not in performance but in presence, not in success but in surrender, not in perception but in truth. And once you see it clearly, no one will ever be able to take it from you again. You are not becoming someone new. You are returning to who you were always meant to be. And in that becoming, heaven rejoices. There comes a sacred point in your journey when you awaken to a truth that transforms everything. You were never merely human, you were divinely chosen. This isn't pride, it's realization. When you embrace this identity, you begin to walk not just with confidence, but with purpose born from heaven. You look back and see it clearly now. Every painful step, every closed door, every heartbreak was a stone laid down by God, building the path to your destiny. But here's a question. What if your greatness was never in the future, but hidden in your present obedience? What if you're not becoming someone new, but remembering who you already were in God's eyes? You are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a peculiar people. 1 Peter 2:9. That's not a metaphor, that's your identity. As you grow into this divine identity, one power begins to radiate from you more than anything else: compassion, not passive pity, but active healing love. This compassion isn't born from convenience, it's forged in your trials. You've been through enough to feel the pain of others. You've suffered enough to recognize suffering, even in silence. And that's what makes you a healer. Can you remember the last time someone's silent struggle pulled on your spirit more than their words? That's compassion awakening in you. Could it be that your greatest spiritual gift is your ability to feel deeply and respond with love, even when the world gives none? When Jesus saw the crowds, he was moved with compassion for them because they were weary and scattered, like sheep having no shepherd. Matthew 9:36. That same divine stirring lives inside you. You weren't just chosen to understand truth, you were chosen to carry it in tenderness. Let me tell you about Jonah, a street barber in Sao Paulo who began offering free haircuts every Sunday to the homeless. What started as an act of kindness became his ministry. People said, "You're wasting your time." But Jonah said, "Every head I touch, I pray healing over." Years later, one man he helped is now a pastor. What if your daily acts of compassion are the seeds of someone else's salvation? Compassion is the antidote to judgment. It's what enables you to see the soul before you see the mistake. It's the divine lens through which you begin to love unconditionally. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. Ephesians 4:32. When others criticize or reject, you comfort. When others turn away, you lean in. But compassion must begin within. Are you willing to extend the same mercy to yourself that you so freely offer others? Many chosen ones carry guilt like chains, but God never asked you to drag your past. He asks you to walk in your calling. Through compassion, you forgive. Through compassion, you heal. Above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. 1 Peter 4:8. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's releasing. It's saying, "I choose love over bitterness." That choice heals generations. Could it be that by forgiving yourself, you unlock the destiny God's been waiting to reveal? Like a tree whose roots stretch deep underground, compassion grounds your calling. It's not just what you do, it's who you are. You were designed to bring warmth where there's coldness, to bring calm where there's chaos. Have you ever noticed that your presence brings peace before you even speak? This is not accidental. You are a vessel, a carrier of divine love. The world is desperate for compassion, and when you live in it, you change atmospheres. A look, a prayer, a gentle word. These things carry more power than you know. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Matthew 5:7. And when you walk in mercy, you don't just change lives, you align heaven with earth. That is the mission of the chosen. You were never called just to survive. You were called to heal, to comfort, to ignite hope. The compassion in you is not weakness. It is divine strength. So ask yourself again, what would happen if I led with love in every room I enter? What would shift if I allowed God's compassion to be my default reaction instead of defensiveness or doubt? When you do this, when you live from that space of sacred compassion, you are no longer just a person. You are a portal of heaven's healing. Through you, God touches the broken. Through you, the lonely feel seen. Through you, the atmosphere shifts. And that is what being chosen truly means. Resilience is not just a quality you happen to possess. It is a divine trait woven into your spirit, chosen one. While others may collapse under the weight of their trials, you carry within you a mysterious strength that doesn't just help you survive, it transforms you. Being chosen does not mean a life without pain or storms. On the contrary, it means your storms are purposeful, allowed by God to shape you, not destroy you. Have you ever wondered why the winds hit you harder, why the fire burns longer? It's because your soul is being refined for something eternal. In the Bible, Joseph was betrayed by his own brothers, thrown into a pit, and sold as a slave. He was falsely accused and imprisoned. And yet, through each stage of pain, God was positioning him for the palace. What if your prison seasons are preparing you for promotion, just like his? Joseph didn't just endure hardship, he became wiser, more humble, and spiritually sharper because of it. His resilience didn't just restore him, it elevated him. To be resilient is not merely to bounce back, it is to come back transformed. Every time you're knocked down and rise again, you are not the same. You're deeper, stronger, closer to heaven, and this process reveals layers of your character you never knew existed. It's like a mountain forged by pressure deep beneath the earth's surface. Silent, hidden, but unstoppable. Could it be that the pressure in your life is evidence of the greatness rising within you? Consider Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, who once said, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." Frankl's story reminds us that resilience is not just reaction, it is revelation. Even in a concentration camp, he found meaning in suffering, proving that purpose can be uncovered in the darkest places. You too are uncovering something sacred in your struggle. Let me tell you about Helena, a young woman who lost everything in a fire: her home, her business, her sense of direction. For weeks, she wept and wandered. But then, something within her shifted. She began painting what she saw in her dreams: flames turning into flowers, ashes forming wings. A year later, her artwork inspired thousands, and her story became a symbol of rebirth. What changed her life was not what she lost, it was how she rose from it. Just as the caterpillar must surrender in stillness to become a butterfly, you too must embrace the stillness between breaking and rising. There is beauty in the in-between, chosen one. In those moments when it feels like everything has crumbled, that is when God is building you from the inside out. Even Jesus, before his resurrection, endured the agony of Gethsemane and the silence of the tomb. His greatest glory came only after his greatest sorrow. Isn't it remarkable how God doesn't remove suffering, but transforms it into the foundation of resurrection? What if the night you're walking through is actually the setup for a sunrise that will change everything? Resilience is not forged in ease. It is birthed in fire. And every time you face adversity and choose not to give up, your spirit gains new strength. With every test, your spiritual muscles grow. Your eyes see more clearly. Your heart hears God more deeply. You are not walking alone. He is right there beside you, whispering, "You were born for this." And as you keep walking, stumbling, then rising again, you'll realize resilience is not just how you endure, it's how you evolve. Like iron sharpened in flame, your strength is becoming unbreakable. Like roots that grow deeper during drought, your faith is becoming immovable. The deeper the breaking, the higher the calling. Have you noticed that? In the end, this unshakable resilience becomes your foundation, not just for surviving life's storms, but for stepping boldly into your divine calling. You emerge not just restored, but ready, not just healed, but holy. And you carry the sacred evidence of every battle won, not in bitterness, but in brilliance. This is how you rise, chosen one, not in spite of the fire, but through it, and because of it. For you, God's chosen one, prayer is not a routine. It is the rhythm of your soul. It is not just a whisper in the dark or a habit before meals. It is the breath of your relationship with the Almighty. Every time you pray, you are not merely speaking into the silence. You are stepping into sacred communion. Prayer is where your spirit meets the divine, where your heart pours out and heaven leans in. Have you ever felt that unexplainable peace that comes after you've cried out to God? That stillness that settles over you as if the Creator himself has wrapped his arms around you. Think of King David, a man after God's own heart. He didn't only pray when life was good. He prayed in caves while hunted, heartbroken, and betrayed. In Psalm 34:17 he wrote, "The righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all their troubles." David's prayers were not polished speeches. They were raw, real, and drenched in honesty. And because of that, he stayed aligned with God's purpose, even when everything around him fell apart. You are no different. Your prayers don't need to be perfect. They only need to be sincere. Each one is a lifeline, a spiritual tether that anchors your soul to heaven when the winds of life howl without mercy. What if every unanswered prayer was actually a redirected one, moving you into closer alignment with your divine mission? Mother Teresa, a Catholic nun who devoted her life to serving the poor in Calcutta, once said, "God speaks in the silence of the heart. Listening is the beginning of prayer." She spent countless hours in prayer, not always hearing an answer, but always walking in faith. And through that silence, she changed the lives of thousands. Isn't it remarkable how some of the most world-changing voices are forged in the quiet places of prayer? Let me tell you about Javier, a former athlete who lost his career in a single moment due to an injury. Devastated, angry, and drowning in confusion, he turned to prayer, not because he knew what to say, but because he had nowhere else to go. Day by day, sitting on a park bench with no words, just silence, he began to feel something shift. Peace replaced bitterness. Purpose replaced despair. And now, Javier runs a youth center for children who've also lost their way. He says it all began the day he stopped talking at God and started sitting with him. Prayer doesn't just change situations, it changes you. It is a spiritual reset, a return to your core, a reminder that you are not alone in the weight you carry. When your mind is anxious, prayer becomes your sanctuary. When your heart is weary, prayer becomes your strength. And when your path seems hidden, prayer becomes the light that reveals the next step. Can you imagine the flight of a bird rising higher with every beat of its wings? That's what prayer does to your spirit. With each prayer, you are lifted above the noise, given a clearer view, and reminded of who you are, chosen, beloved, and protected. Even Jesus, the Son of God, withdrew often to pray. In Mark 1:35 it says, "Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed." If the Savior of the world found strength and direction through prayer, how much more vital is it for you? And prayer isn't just for comfort, it's a divine weapon. It sharpens your spiritual discernment, unlocks heavenly instruction, and fills your heart with courage to take steps even when you don't see the full staircase. Through prayer, you are aligned with God's timing, guided by His wisdom, and held by His mercy. Imagine the roots of a great tree, unseen beneath the surface, drawing water from the depths to keep the tree standing tall through storms. Your prayer life is those roots. No one may see them, but they are what hold you steady when everything else shakes. So when the world feels loud, when answers feel delayed, and when your soul longs for direction, return to prayer, not as a duty, but as your lifeline, your sacred space, your source of strength. Because every time you pray, chosen one, heaven listens, and the road ahead becomes clear. In the end, prayer is not a step in your journey, it is the journey itself. It is how you walk with God, moment by moment, step by step, heart to heart. And it is through that walk that you fulfill your calling. Not in your own strength, but through the whispered power of every prayer you've ever dared to pray. One of the deepest desires planted within the heart of God's chosen ones is to live in total harmony with the will of the divine. This is not a passive desire, it's a sacred mission. To live aligned with God's will means surrendering every part of your life, from your dreams to your decisions to His perfect plan. It requires letting go of ambitions rooted in ego, of chasing after status or control, and instead embracing a life of purpose, a life offered in service to something far greater than yourself. But what does that really look like? It is not always as simple as it sounds. Living according to God's will demands a daily practice of trust, especially when the way ahead is unclear. Abraham knew this tension well. God called him to leave his homeland and go to the land I will show you. Genesis 12:1. Not a map, not a plan, just a promise. And Abraham obeyed, walking not by sight but by faith. Can you imagine stepping forward without knowing where your next step leads, only believing that God goes before you? You too are called to walk in that kind of surrender. And yet, surrender does not mean weakness. It is the highest form of strength. To live aligned with the will of the divine is to walk a path where everything, even your delays and detours, carries divine significance. Suddenly, the pain that once confused you becomes the preparation that strengthens you. The waiting that once felt like punishment becomes the womb of transformation. Haven't you noticed that sometimes what feels like a pause is really God preparing you for something greater? Nelson Mandela, after spending 27 years in prison, emerged not bitter, but better, ready to lead South Africa into freedom. He once said, "I never lose. I either win or learn." That mindset, rooted in surrender and purpose, is what it looks like to live in alignment with something larger than yourself. Like Mandela, chosen one, your setbacks may not be detours, but destinations in disguise. Let me share the story of Elias, a composer who, at the height of his career, suddenly lost his hearing. At first, he was devastated. Music had been his life, but in the silence he began to listen differently, not with his ears, but with his soul. Over time, he composed pieces more profound than ever before. His silence had not been a curse, but a calling, a way to tune into heaven's melody. How often do we miss God's guidance because we're too busy trying to orchestrate our own? Living in harmony with divine will often calls you to embrace silence, not as absence, but as presence. In 1 Kings 19:12, God did not speak to Elijah through the wind, the earthquake, or the fire, but through a still, small voice. When the noise of the world fades, your spirit begins to hear the whispers of eternity. And like the tide that surrenders to the moon's pull, your soul finds its peace when it surrenders to God's rhythm. You may not understand the timing, but faith tells you the clock in heaven does not tick by human logic. It moves by divine orchestration. Isn't it strangely freeing to realize that not getting what you want right now might be God protecting what's meant for later? When you stop striving and start surrendering, frustration melts into trust, impatience dissolves into stillness. You begin to sense that where you are is exactly where you're meant to be, and in that realization, peace floods your spirit. Not because everything is perfect, but because you know the one who is. It's like watching the stars emerge at night. You can't force their appearance, but you trust they'll shine in time. Similarly, when you walk in step with God's plan, you begin to understand His delays are not denials, they are divine alignments. Everything has its season, everything has its appointed time, and chosen one, your time is not behind you, it's unfolding right now. When you embrace this lifestyle, where obedience matters more than outcomes, where purpose matters more than position, you step into a freedom few ever taste. This is the freedom of knowing that your life is not random. It is written, and every chapter, every sentence, every comma has meaning. This is the path of those who are chosen. They don't chase destiny, they walk with it. They don't cling to the steering wheel, they hand it to God. And in doing so, they find something the world can't offer: satisfaction, peace, a sense of divine belonging. To live in alignment with the will of God is not just a path, it is your home. And when you walk that path, chosen one, you are not just fulfilling a calling, you are living a life that heaven smiles upon. Chosen one, if you've made it this far, it's not by accident, it's by divine appointment. Everything you've walked through, every silent season, every delayed answer, every surrender you've made has been preparing you for this exact moment, to live fully aligned with the will of the one who created you. And in that alignment, you will find what the world cannot give: peace that surpasses understanding, strength that cannot be shaken, and a purpose that cannot be stolen. Remember, walking in God's will doesn't mean the road will always be easy, but it does mean the road is holy. And every step you take, no matter how slow, how uncertain, or how difficult, is a step closer to your highest calling. If this message spoke to your spirit, if you felt seen, known, or strengthened in any way, comment 777 below to seal this word over your life and stand boldly in agreement with heaven. And if you feel led, you can support this message and this mission by giving through Super Thanks. Your generosity makes it possible for us to keep sharing these truths with the world. But whether you give or not, please know this: we are deeply grateful for you. Your presence here, your time, your spirit, it all matters. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone else who needs to hear this today. You never know whose breakthrough is waiting on the other side of your obedience. May God bless you with clarity, surround you with peace, and guide you with His perfect light. May your path align with heaven, and may your purpose unfold exactly as God intended. You are chosen, you are seen, and your time is now.